We are halfway through the events, and there was a lot of interesting topics which were running under the developer track. We learned about Viva topics, we learned about SharePoint syntax, Power Apps portal, and then the Viva extensibility model using SPFX. So thanks to all the sponsors without which this event would not have been possible. Thanks to Microsoft, Panthera Technologies, Soho Dragon, Quizcom, and JPower. So today it is about a virtual event wherein we have hands-on sessions by the experts and community leaders deep diving into Microsoft 365 service around Teams, SharePoint, and Power Platform. And there are lots of exciting prizes to be won at the end of the event. So stay tuned. So today's topic is about we are in the developer track, and today's topic is about building Teams app with Visual Studio Code Teams Toolkit. Myself, Siddharth Vagasia, I'm Microsoft MVP and independent consultant. You can connect with me on the LinkedIn or the Twitter handle, and this is my personal website wherein I write some blogs. So agenda for today, we would be seeing the overview of the Teams app. What are different kinds of Teams app which we uh, which can create. Then there are different ways of creating Teams app, and we will focus on Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio Code because this is the main session topic for today. And they will also have demo and walkthrough around the Teams Toolkit and what kind of resources it creates, what kind of project structure it creates, etc. Now, let's first see, what is Teams app, right? Uh, as you, if you would have attended the welcome note and from Jeff and Vesa, the Teams adoption has been at the peak right now, wherein we have reached around 250 million users per month, which is last month data. And also in SharePoint, they probably all the organizations and the users are adding around one petabyte of data per month on the SharePoint. Okay, so Teams adoption has been uh, very much been used in terms of by the organization on the personal level also because of this pandemic and where all the things are going virtually, right? Now, whenever a product or and technology stack is popular and is being used by majority of the people, there would be a lot of opportunities which gets opened in terms of how we can extend that particular product, right? Because every time a product won't be exactly fitting our need, and we would need a way to extend it so that it fits our business needs. So same thing can be done using Teams app also. It is, if you can consider Teams app, it is more or less an app which we see on our mobile, which can be downloaded from the Play Store and App Store, right? Same way with Teams also, because Teams is an client, and it can be a thick client which can be installed on desktop. It can be used in the mobile, on the Android, on the iOS. It can be used on the tablet, and in fact it can also be used in the browser. So once we have this kind of product, what we can do is there is a Teams app store and Microsoft app stores, or you can have your own Teams app catalog within an organization or a tenant where we can deploy this app and whether user would be able to use this app. And it's an more or less it's a way to extend Teams, okay, so that it fits our need. There would be different kind of business use case which we wanted to implement, wherein we wanted to have a simple business use case, or where we wanted to have collaboration features across different applications which we are using. We can create a new Teams app, and or we can integrate with the existing apps also. There are different types of combinations of capabilities which are available, through which we would be altogether creating a whole new Teams app experience, or we can extend what we have in terms of the user interface which Teams allows, and we can add some extra features on top of it. And more or less why we would need Teams as is because what we do generally is we have an Teams application which is, nowadays our most of the time when we are working, whether it will be working from home or whether it will be working from the office, we are spending most of the times in the Teams, whether it would be communication, collaboration, sharing files, or it can be a number of things, right? Now, what if you have a single user interface or a single application through which you would be able to switch the context? Okay, you probably might be using different kinds of applications which are there within your organization, and what if you can surface all of these apps into Teams itself, so that you don't have to go outside of Teams to access this app, and also you can maintain and collaborate around this existing content and data. Definitely what it will do is will improve our productivity, it will increase the focus and everything, because we are doing everything inside a single application. So let's see what are the different types of Teams app which we can create, right? We can create a Teams personal app. Okay, the Teams personal app would be the app which would be surfaced on the left navigation in the Teams app. Uh, it can be a bot, it can be a private workspace, or it can be both, right? And it is more or less a place where you can create and view content which is personalized to you. It means an example, if we see of an Teams personal app, which we have already in the Teams App Store from Microsoft, is the Planner and To Do task. So Planner and To Do is more or less concise to a particular logged in user, and it will always display the data which is for the current user. So this is one of the example. Then there are other external applications also, like quick links, which will allow you to create quick links and manage your quick links by tagging it. It is more or like bookmark only what we used to do, but it can be run in the context of the current user. And it's, if for example I am creating, no other user would be able to see that, because it is the data which is for my personal use. Moving ahead, we can create tabs. Okay, this is very interesting, and this is one of the most common scenarios of creating or extending a Teams app, wherein tabs would be surfaced either as in part of your Teams channel, where you see the files and everything, or it can also be a personal Teams app without being in the Teams context. Right now, tabs are nothing but, and Teams aware web pages which are embedded in Microsoft Teams. So you can surface any application which you have as in the tabs by using the iframe. By it would be just using the iframe tags, and so that the application which is hosted somewhere would be surfaced in the Teams app. But when we as in developer are creating a Teams tab, what we used to do is we used to make the application which uses the collaboration and the communication feature of Teams itself, right? That's where we would be able to make an app which is truly collaborative in nature. It means that there are facilities wherein we would be able to mention user, or we would be able to search user, where we are able to provide option to directly chat with the user within our Teams app. So this all kind of applications which we would create would be Teams aware. It would know the Teams context. Plus, it would also help us in terms of authentication and authorization, because the user has already logged into the Teams, and the single sign-on and OAuth 2 concept would come in picture, and we would be able to use that token to only get data where the user has access to. And this totally depends on what kind of Teams tab or an app you are creating. Then another thing is we can also use SharePoint website within a tab. So it means if you have a web part which you have created, you can definitely use that SPFX web part which would be surfaced in the Microsoft Teams tab. Coming to bots, so bots are basically kind of an conversational bots which will allow us to interact with the users, right? And the bot can be as simple as just answering questions and answers, answering answers for the user's query by having an FAQ kind of database using Knowledge Maker, or you can have your own custom database where you might have stored the your knowledge base, or it can be as complex as in which would be doing based on some interaction with the user. It would be updating some data in your external application via web services. So bot also is one of the another common type of Teams app which you would see, and which will allow user to interact with the bot and do certain actions. So certain examples of bot can be wherein if you have an ERP system in place, which is wherein the request has been created to the user, you can send a notification to the user via Teams bot and display an adaptive card. And based on the adaptive card, if they have buttons there, once they click on the button, they would be able to actually update data back into your ERP system also. So there are different use cases through which this Teams app capability can also be used. Now moving to messaging extension. Okay, this is interesting in terms of this is one of the way of when I say right, we can create new Teams app and we can integrate into the existing Teams app capability. So you can consider messaging extension as in integration into the existing Teams app. Messaging extensions always runs in the context of the compose window. Okay, the compose message area where you are typing the messages. It will allow you to add a button, and on click of that button you can surface the user interface. You can write your own logic. It can be a pop-up, it can be a task module, or it can be as simple as just calling a web service. And the other one, it would be a command box from where you would be able to add that. And also the messaging extension can be accessed by right clicking on any of the messages, and where you would see an context menu which gets open, which would be in the context of the message. And you can use that context also, that okay, user is trying to perform a task on the message which has been sent by the user. A good and a prime example of this is, if you guys would have noticed, when you go to any Teams message within your Teams one-to-one chat or in your Teams channel, there would be an action which says create an action in Planner or create an action in To Do. So this is one of the messaging extension feature provided by Microsoft, which is already been deployed as a part of our Teams application itself, through which we would be able to interact with web service via buttons and forms. Moving ahead, a meeting extension. So meeting extensions is again a way of delivering user experience, but this extension would be when a meeting is in progress. Okay, but it's not just that the meeting in progress. The meeting extension can be used at each stage of a meeting life cycle. Now we know that whenever a meeting is been planned, there would be three stage of it. There would be a pre-meeting experience, or uh, pre-meeting agenda, pre-meeting preparation, which would be done as a part of that meeting. Then there would be in meeting, which would be basically while the meeting is in progress, and there can be a post meeting app experience also. So in a way, if you consider this, what we can do is we can have the app which can be used in all three stage of the meeting life cycle. Some of the examples, if I can say about, is like if you wanted to have, if you would have used an poll application within your Teams application, you wanted to surface the polls while the meeting is in progress. That is one of the meeting extension which we can do. And we as in developer also can create this kind of meeting experience, which would be able to surface data from the external application. It can also be from the under any of the Microsoft 365 services, and it would render as in on the right hand side of the side panel. It can also have a pop-up experience wherein which will give the user and or the attendees and way of interacting with that particular application as soon as it has been triggered by the meeting organizers. Okay, so poll is one of the prime example of it. Right. So moving ahead, we have webhooks and connectors. Now, webhooks and connectors are kind of way to again interact with the external service or within your Teams channels and messages. But it can be done based on the events. I mean, most of us would know that what webhook is. Basically, webhook is a way wherein the publisher and the subscriber would agree to something, that if some event would be occurring in the publisher side of the application, the subscriber would respond to that event by sending the payload information. Similar concept is being applied here, wherein webhooks are the user defined HTTP callback, right? So once you register a webhook within your Teams app, if it is an incoming webhook, what you are saying is that if any event is occurring in my Teams channel or messages, I would send you a post back on, what it was related to, and that both parties would have agreed upon, right? And it is also a way to get real time data. Same way, connectors are same thing like in the webhooks, but connectors gives us the some of the out of the box capabilities through which we would be able to send and receive notification and messages from and to web service. This is again been exposed via HTTP endpoints only, and wherein any external application can post some cards or messages into the Teams channel as soon as that particular event has happened. So all of these are different types of Teams app capabilities or Teams app which we can create in a way to extend our Teams. And The good thing about is that all of this is supported by Microsoft Graph for Teams, right? And there are Microsoft Graph APIs specifically available for Teams, through which we would be able to access all the teams, all the members within the teams, the channels, the messages, etc. And we can build a solution or design a solution around it, wherein the data or the apps which we are building would be able will allow us to access the data within the team itself and not from anywhere else. So Microsoft Graph can be, in the center of it if you wanted to, if you are creating something which is very much tightly coupled with the data in the teams itself, or in the channels, or in the messages itself. Now let's see what to know about Teams platform capabilities, and what are the common features and what you can use as in the Teams app capability. So this table is from the Microsoft document itself, but it gives us a very good user from the developer perspective. It gives us what to use when, right? So for example, if you wanted to embed a web page, home page, or web view, you can use tabs. If you wanted to share shortcut and extensions, or actions and shortcuts and extension, then you can use messaging extensions. If you want to create bot on the Teams app, as in the channels, or one-to-one chat also, you can use bot. If you want to send notification, it would be a proactive notification, something, you can use bot. You can also use incoming webhooks, because that would allow us to send message from the external application, and then also use Office 365 connectors. Now, if you want to pass the data to any external services, then also you can use bot. Bot in a way would be wherein once the user interacts with the message which has been sent by clicking on a button or by just typing something, we can call the external web service. And it also can be done using outgoing webhooks. If you want to have a model like experience, you can use task module. Task module is one of the capabilities only within the Teams app, but it doesn't run individually. It runs always in the context of the teams types of Teams app which we create. And then you can also use adaptive cards, to send the content rich card for the user. Now, Now let's see some common use cases, okay, which you can build, right? So this is again a diagram from Microsoft documentation itself, but it gives us a very good overview of what kind of thing we can do using the Teams, different types of Teams app which are available. So if you, there would be in the center, there is a Teams app. If you are talking about tabs, okay, what you can do is you can display your content in an iframe. You can authenticate with third-party services. You can display task module, which is a model experience. You can have deep linking. Deep linking is basically a concept wherein as soon as a notification is when sent to the user via email or via Teams notification, and user clicks on it, user would be taken back to that particular link with the context of what the message or notification was been sent, right? You can display SharePoint pages and web part. You can request for the device permission if you're talking about Teams app in the mobile application. You can display Power Apps and Surface in the Teams tab, and you can also display Power BI data, right? Now coming to the bot, you can send proactive messages, you can send card, you can access the messages like update message, delete messages, you can send files to the user, you can also display task modules within the bot, and then you can get the data related to user group chat or Teams, and also authenticate third parties. And you can also have a bot which is part of your calling or a meeting bot. So and good automation can be done if you have a bot which is enabled for Teams meeting, wherein a bot can be part of the meeting and it can do certain operation based on what we wanted to do, right? Coming to messaging extension, these are compose box add-ons. So what you can do is you can search and display external data. Then you can display task modules. You can take actions on the messages. You can send cards. You can unfurl links. For those who don't know what is unfurl links, is basically a way of showing the preview of the link as soon as you typing the link. So you might have used this at many times. Whenever we paste any link from anywhere, right? There are, if you go about any Microsoft 365 product, it will give you a preview of that link which you are sharing, and that happens in LinkedIn also, that happens in Twitter also, that can happen in this thing also. So you can use that link to basically show a custom preview of what you wanted to display in terms of and small image, in terms of the link name, title, and description also. Talking about Microsoft Teams webhooks and connectors in the Teams app, as I said, you can have incoming webhooks, you can have outgoing webhooks, which would with which you would be able to send cards, collect user inputs, and refresh card. With the outgoing, you would be able to request data from the external application, post data back to the external application, and also send cards. With Office 365 connectors, which is for only incoming webhooks, you will be able to collect user inputs, send cards, and customize user experience. Right. So this is more or less will give you a high level picture of what kind of deep level functionality which you can use, or what kind of what are the different scenarios in which, and what are the availabilities of the functionality which you can do using Microsoft Teams app. Moving on, there are different ways to create a Teams app. Okay, the first and the foremost one when the Teams app was generated, came into picture, was the Yeoman generator, which is the oldest one, and it has capability wherein you would be able to scaffold your project using your team generator, which is an npm based package, and using which you would be able to create the project, and then you can extend from it. Okay, your generator can be used in the as an npm package on any project which you want. uh, so there are all of the capabilities which are there in the Teams app can be done via your Teams. Okay, so this is the most popular one. Then you have a toolkit for Visual Studio. So when I say Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code, hopefully the difference between them is this is the premium and the professional version of the Visual Studio, and Visual Studio Code is the light and open source version of the Visual Studio itself. But nowadays, most of the open source toolings which are been used on top of the open source technology is using Visual Studio Code, because it is free and there are many extensibility options are available. And one of them is Toolkit for Visual Studio Code. So this is an extension which is the main title of our topic, through which we would be able to create a Teams app. Then you can also create use Dataverse for Teams for creating a quick Teams app, which is nothing but more or less using Dataverse as in your database, and Power Apps as in your front end, to basically connect your application to Dataverse and surface into Teams itself. You can also have standalone web development. It means the apps, when you create an app, there is a concept of manifest.json file, wherein you can have any web application which is available can be surfaced as in Teams app, right? So it is not that you cannot have anything. If you want to create a Teams app, it needs to be created via one of the options below. Any applications which is browsable in the web, which is allowed to be rendered in an iframe, you can use it as in the Teams app. And then there is Teams App Studio, which is an app itself in the Teams, through which you would be able to create manifest file, and it gives you a nice and the easier way to create the manifest file using the user interface experience, where you can create description. It will also allow you to validate. It will allow you to uh, add the configuration URL. It will allow you to add privacy URL. So this App Studio works very much well, because you don't want to, if you don't want to create the manifest file, which is the center of an Teams app, manually, and if you don't want to understand the JSON format in which it has, then it will automatically, we can use the Teams App Studio to basically create the base manifest file and then go and extend from it, right? So let's talk about Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio Code, right? It is basically an extension, as I said, to create Teams app from the Visual Studio Kit. Okay, many what you have used, many of the Visual Studio extensions which are available in the as in the add-on to Visual Studio Code itself. It will help developer to create and deploy the Teams app. Okay. The good thing about the toolkit is, it has everything set up in terms of integrated identity. It allows us to access the cloud storage directly from the Visual Studio Code itself. It also gives us an base file or an base way to access data from the Graph API using the single sign-on mechanism. It means it use all the authentication and authorization files which we would have to manually create if we are not using Teams Toolkit. Okay, which merely is also available in your Teams. Okay, it is not just very much specific to Teams Toolkit, but it also gives a way for us to directly use that method wherein a sample is there that how to get data from the Graph API, and then we can extend on top of it. It also has other services wherein we can publish the app to Azure and also to Microsoft 365, right? Um, they call it as, a zero configuration approach, because we don't have to take care of all the configuration which we would have to do if we are creating a Teams app from the other way. If it would be in your Teams, or either it would be and standalone Teams app and everything. So when we say zero configuration, based on what kind of app you are building, we would might have to do certain steps in terms of registering an Azure AD app, giving permissions to the APIs and everything. And all of this has been taken care from here. And it also gives us an improved developer experience. It means the development is easy, the debugging is easy, which we will see. It is more or less just, clicking an F5 and just it will pop up the Teams, and it will show you the similar experience which the end user is going to have once you would publish that app to it. And still you can debug it directly from the Visual Studio Code itself. Now, as of today, in the Teams Toolkit, we have only 3 supported app capabilities, which is to create bot, which is tabs, which is to create bot and messaging extension. It means we won't be able to create the webhooks, the connectors, etc. from here. It only these three capabilities are available as of now, but they are extending it. They are spending time on, adding new features to it, and with the latest version they have added many new features wherein from the toolkit itself we are able to publish to Azure and everything, right? So hopefully to see more app capabilities would be supported in future in the Teams toolkit itself. Now to understand the Teams toolkit, let's see the user flow. So when we say user flow, this is from the developer's perspective and not from the end user perspective, like what you have to do when you wanted to create a Teams app, right? So there are two options: either you start creating a new project or you start with a sample. So there are different sample templates which are available in the GitHub, through which can be our base point to start a new project. Okay, and when we use the sample, there are different types of sample which probably might be 10% or 15% of it might be putting out in place and what you require. Like probably if you require to access data from Graph API, then there are samples available where it will allow you to have single sign-on experience, and all the files and everything would be created automatically. Right? When we are at the stage of develop and debug, okay, what we would need is we would need to sign into Microsoft 365. And why this is required? Because once we run any Teams app project from the Teams toolkit, it needs to sign into a Teams application which would run in the context of that particular user. So you need to sign into Microsoft 365. And optionally, you can edit the manifest file, and also you can add different app capabilities, Teams app capabilities, right? The second stage would be provisioning in the cloud. Now, when we say provisioning, we are talking about provisioning the resources which the Teams app would require in the cloud. It means once a Teams app is created, it is, as I said, it is more or less an web development which we are doing, right? So it needs to be hosted somewhere. So you can use either Azure if you wanted to be in the closed ecosystem of Microsoft 365, or you can also host it somewhere else. Okay, it is not mandatory to host your Teams application in cloud itself. But if you are if you choose to host in Azure, you would be able to provision all the resources directly from Visual Studio Code to your Azure environment or Azure subscription, right? And so this will require you to sign into Azure. So you should have a valid Azure subscription, because most of the resource which you will create won't be the free resources which are available within the Azure offerings. So you would have to have an Azure signing and a valid subscription to basically provision these resources. And we will see what kind of resources is going to create. Then next is to deploy to cloud. Now, when you say deploy to cloud, see, this will create and provision the resources which are required, right? But when we talk about deploy, it means because the Teams app itself is an app which needs to have a compiled version of app or a compiled or a running version of app when it has been deployed. This is what the deploy to cloud would do. It basically will compile your project into and executable or which can be run in the web browser in terms of either it would be an IIS or it can be depending on what we choose to do and what kind of technology we have choose. In as of now, in the Teams toolkit, we are only able to do it via TypeScript and JavaScript. So what it is going to do is it is going to create an public static website, okay, which would be compiled to pure HTML, JavaScript, and CSS once we have done our development. So this is where the deploy to cloud would work. And optionally, what you can do, you can add new cloud resource, you can validate your manifest file, and you can zip the Teams metadata package. Now, this is important and which we will see because this is how the end user or your IT admin of your Teams administrator would be using this package to basically upload the Teams app into your organization, which would be available optionally for the end user to install, or they can force also, they can do it via group policy that in my tenant I want this app to be pre-installed on all the users or all the Teams client when the user logs in. So this you can choose, and then you publish it to team. Now when we say publish it to teams, this is wherein you can choose whether you want to do it at organization level, at the tenant level, or you want to allow user to use side loading, etc. And optionally you can set up your CI/CD process also. So with this, we will go to the demo. Um, First, what we'll do is we will have a Teams toolkit walkthrough. Then we will see Teams app in action, which has been generated by a Teams app. We are not going into focus of on uh, the detail of what kind of app it is created. It would be a very simple Hello World app, but it help us to understand the concept of what we would be building. Teams app would be building on top of the React framework. So it would be using React as in the front end framework. And so the code which we would be seeing would be on the React. And then you can publish to Azure Cloud. And then we will also see under the hood what kind of resources and what kind of configuration it is doing automatically for us whenever we use the Teams toolkit to develop our Teams app. So I'll go to demo.
Siddharth, just a reminder, we have 10 minutes left.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so hope you are seeing my Visual Studio thing.
Yes.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so first thing is how would you install a Visual Studio extension, right? So whoever has Visual Studio installed, if you click on extensions, here you can go and search for Teams Toolkit, and you will see the marketplace of all the extension which are available. Because I have already installed, it won't allow me to install it again. But if you choose anything which is not installed like XML toolkit, there is just an install button, and clicking of this it will just install the Teams app. And once it is installed, you should see something like this on the end, which is Teams toolkit. If your Visual Studio doesn't have any Teams project open, it will give you an option to create new teams, view samples, or it can ask you to open an existing Teams app. For now, what we'll do is we'll create a new Teams app. And if you click on it, it says whether what you want to do. Do you want to start from the sample or create a new one? I will say create a new one. Right. Sorry. I have to first select Teams a new app, and then I have to choose the capability. Now, as I said, there are only limited capabilities as of now available. You can have tab, bot, and messaging extension. This tab is and Teams our web page, which is embedded in Teams. But if you want to create using SharePoint framework, that also can be done. We would be using this. And you choose a programming language. We will use TypeScript, and then you put an application name. So here we will say M365 Bangalore. and says okay. So what it will do, it will start scaffolding the project and it will create the project structure which would be required, right? Yes, I trust the authors. So it has scaffolded the project, it has created the required files and everything which would be required. It will also give you a detailed documentation or README file on what needs to be done. Okay, what are the prerequisites? Like it says, it needs to have Node.js install, etc. Before we go here, it will take couple of minutes to run npm install. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run this and say start debugging without doing nothing, right? And here it will run the npm install everything, and once it is installed, it will spin up an Edge browser and it will open a Teams app and it will start using showing the Teams app as in the end user experience, right? Now while it is happening, let's go and see what happens in terms of the project structure which is created, right? Because we have used Teams tab, it says in the tab itself you would see src folder wherein there is an index.tsx which is an entry point to your application. So this is a typical React application. So it would have, a React DOM render method which is loading a main component which is the app component. The app component is coming from here where you have different providers and routes created, right? And then there is a tab component which is an entry point to the application. So once you click on tab, there is another component. So this is something which they have set up in terms of how they wanted to organize the code. Okay, you probably can have an code. Why they have this tab component? Because this is a main component. You can have different components and make it reusable across what you wanted to do. That is the concept of React. Now, if we go to welcome component, in the welcome component, we will have the actual user interface like the menu and what we will see once the application would run. There are three tabs where it would have one tab which would be the first step would be to which will show the congratulation and your app is running, and the second one being deploy and the publish. It is just an instruction which they have given. Okay, ideally in the real world scenario we won't be using this welcome tag as in it. We will have our own our own welcome landing component which we would be using. So it is starting the development server, and it is a typical Node.js based project, okay, which we have. Now, if you see, it has pinned up and Microsoft Edge browser. It will ask me to log in. And it will ask me to install the app itself. This is how the end user would be doing it. If you see, the app name is local debug, and once I click on add, it will basically create an app which would be surfaced on the left hand side, and which would be a personal tab, and it says congratulations, your app is running, build your app locally, provision to deploy and everything, right? And it also has an authorization thing set up, as I was saying. Once I click on, so once you have an Teams app which is Teams aware, default you would be able to access only few information. But what if you wanted to actually make the graph API calls, right? So this is how that would work. It asks you the user contents consent, and once you have the consent, it is showing you the user profile, the name and the email address. Okay, and in terms of debugging, it is very much easy. If you are changing anything, if you put a debug point, it will automatically be the debug point would hit, and you could be able to debug it, right? So this is as easy as it gets. What you have to do is you have to just open the project, run it. The details or the thing about creating the app is something which you would should be doing. If you are familiar with React and SPFX, you would be able to definitely use this, right? Coming to the next one, let's see what happens once you have a project which is already opened in the Teams app, right? So by default, you have an account here, which I have already logged in. If you have not logged in, you would be able to log in from here. And then uh, what there are sections of things which you can do, right? For now, what I would do is I would say that I want the next step for me is, for example, I have the app which is ready. I want to provision it into the cloud, right? So when I say provision into the cloud, it asks me for the subscription, and this subscription would be based on this login account which we have. I say pay as you go. I would say I wanted to create a new resource group. I would say default setting yes, and I would choose Central India, and it will ask me again and confirmation whether I can provision it. I'll say yes, go ahead and provision it. So it will start provisioning using the ARM templates and creating the required Azure resources which would be there, right? Now, now coming here, if you see, there are different types of environments which you can use. You can have local dev, stage, and production environment. This would be useful because whenever you, as we have just one environment, while I was publishing and provisioning to the cloud, it asked me, right, whether I wanted to use the dev or the local one. It can also allow you to publish everything from here if you have more environments created, and if you want to have different Azure resource groups created within your Azure as soon as you published it the way you wanted to do it, right? Now, once the provisioning is done, the next step would be to deploy to the cloud, okay? And then we will do zip metadata tag, which will give us the zip file, which we can use, and which we can use to basically as in the end user would do, right? It won't be pointing to my local debugger or anything because the application is already provisioned and deployed to the Visual Studio, so to the Azure resources. Okay. While this is happening, what I will do is I would want to run you through what kind of resources it creates. Okay. This is one of the previous default resource group which I has created while I was preparing for the demo. And if you see, it has created four things. One is manage identity, that is to manage the integrated identity of your application with the Teams app. Then you have an app service plan, which by default is created whenever you wanted to host any app service. And then there is a storage account where our it will be used to storage some application inside logging information. Plus, it will also be used to store your compiled version of this thing. Okay. So in this case, the storage account would be acting as in the Azure CDN, wherein the application would be served from the CDN. So if you know the concept of CDN, which is basically content delivery network, wherein the static site or the resources would be directly being served from the Azure CDN. So this is how the storage account would be. Uh, this is how all the resources which would be created, right? Now, the other important thing which I wanted to highlight is if whenever you create and whenever you deploy it, okay, there would be an Azure AD app registration which would happen automatically. Okay. And if we talk about the Teams Toolkit 3 example which I was showing, by default it will create two Azure AD app registration. One would be pointing to your local debugger. This is not the local one. This is the actual published one. Uh, so let's see if we can see this one. So if you see this app registration, it's pointing to your local host, which is basically an Azure AD app registration, which has been created automatically by Teams Toolkit. And it will also do apply all the authentication API permission, which we will see. Okay. But just wanted to highlight that, okay, there would be two apps which would be created. One would be for the local, and if you have test environment production, it will automatically do it. And it makes sense to have different AD app registration so that you can also change the permissions on the environment according to your need whenever you wanted to extend your Teams capability. Okay, this is the Teams app registration for the last one which I have done. And if we go to authentication, it will have this URL where it says, whenever the authentication has been done, return to this particular HTML file, and it will automatically take care of saving the token into the local storage, and so that user don't have to sign in again and again. It will also automatically create the secret, okay, which would be done here, which would be creating here. Then it will also expose this. It will be also set up a default sign-in permission. This we can choose, and we can add on what kind of integration we are doing with the graph, right? And as soon as we know that this is what we are going to with the graph, we have to add this permission here, so that once the user consent would happen, it will basically ask for the user that okay, this application is going to access these things from your thing. Let's quickly see if it is provisioned. Okay, I can see the resources are provisioned here. Okay, now next thing to do is would be to deploy to the cloud. So I'll just click on deploy to the cloud, and it will start deploying, running npm install on the cloud, okay, on the storage account, compile the whole package, as in it can be served via on the web browser as in any hosting server, and it will complete all the process automatically. Okay.
Siddharth, is there anything we have to do when we move this from one tenant to the other tenant? Like we develop it in our development tenant and then we move it to production. Any specific things that need to be taken care of?
I would say probably what you can do is you can have the same version of code wherein you can have a separate account which would be which you can use, right? In this particular case, I can use my Office 365 account to sign in to do the site loading, but I can choose to log into a different tenant's Azure account to directly publish there. But as soon as you use provision in the cloud and you choose to select which Azure tenant you wanted to publish, it will automatically take care. So we don't have to do it. That's the beauty of this thing. That when you move from one tenant to another, it's more or less you are publishing it from your local machine to that particular Azure tenant. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Uh,
We have some questions in the chat window if you can answer them as well.
Sure, no problem. Fine. So I'll just have 1 minute to end this. Okay, I wanted to explain the expose and API. So this is basically where this particular application, which we have created as in Teams app, would be exposed to an API for the single sign-on purpose. Okay. Under the hood, it creates or adds all the client IDs, and if you see, there are 6 client IDs which are created. I know three or four of them. One is for Teams desktop app, one is for Teams browser, one is for Teams iOS, one is for Teams Android, and one is for our Office 365 suite also. Okay, I'm not sure about the last one, what is it about, but this would be always static. It means because this is an app integration using OAuth, every client which would be using the Teams app has to have a particular client ID where it would be exposed, right? And under the hood, you can add scope and everything here. So this is how it basically kind of create whole setup of integration etc under the Azure resource, which we don't know, and which if you would have not used Teams code, we would have to set this up manually. Okay. Now if you see, it has been deployed successfully here, and if I go to the resource group, and if I can choose the Bangalore resource group, I would be able to see similar kind of setup being done here. Okay. The last step here would be to zip it, the package file, and I can choose that I want to zip it for the dev, right? And what it will do, it will automatically create that zip file. I just have to go and I just have to go into build in the app package and use this as in package file. And what I will do is I will quickly show you how to upload the custom app using side loading. And if we go here in the build and choose this package, okay, it will give us the similar experience which we had. And when I click on add, it will basically serve the Teams application from the newly Azure resource which we created and which we have hosted, right? And it will give you the similar experience which we have. Okay, so this is a very simple way or zero configuration approach to Teams app development which we can do, and this can be extended in detail, but the purpose of today's session that you understand what all things can be done using Teams Toolkit, and what things happens under the hood whenever we are using Teams code, because it helps us to understand and extend the model, uh, whenever we want to do it. Okay. These are some of the reference link which I have used and which you can use to further go and expand on this particular topic.